And we are live. All right, we're looking at the sun at 193 angstroms in 1 minute. Just going to bring out the chat. And see who's joined us. Started a little late today because I slept in about 2 hours. Normally I get up at about 3 o'clock. Thanks for tuning in, the 3 current viewers. Welcome to the live space weather. All right, there we go. That's a little better. And there we've got the sun on 193 angstroms. We see a coronal hole rotating out of the Earth-facing region, and an active region rising over here on the east. And it's starting to get a little bit sunspotty looking over there, although there are no umbral cores. So if you see no dark images there, there's no real sunspots. So let's look at the Magneto Graham, the colored one. And there you can see the magnetism associated with that region. It has increased in magnetic complexity a little bit. So that's something to watch, as that could turn into a sunspot without notice. And let's just look at the last 48 here. That first image at 193 angstroms, by the way, that was only today's date. Wow, that's a hell of a filament up there in the northwest. You see that? Jeez. In fact, wow. Let's further analyze that one. That was yesterday. All right, we missed that filament yesterday. So let's just have a look at that real quick. Welcome, Kalo Jan. This is quite the filament up here. Geez. Giant prominence. Let's see this thing play out. Okay, I think I added the wrong dates. All right, anyway, let's just move on here. By the way, we're not trying to make 50-minute long space weather videos. It just happens. All right, so let's move on to the real-time solar wind here, which has been jumping all around. All right, so we see the BT, the total B field here is at about 5, +5 that is. The BZ is at about -2. Nothing too extravagant there. Phi angle is floating up around 300 degrees. We are seeing some undulations in the solar wind density there, currently at 5.46 protons per cubic centimeter. And the solar wind speed has just slightly bumped up there to 416 kilometers per second. Looking at the gong 2, the Earth is now solidly in the North Pole portion, represented in green on this figure. There's the gong 2. That magnetic complexity you see there is associated with that active region. And you can see some obscuring of the fields there closer to the corona. And some undulations. Keep in mind this stuff changes without warning. And this data is 1 hour and 33 minutes old. Looking at spaceweather.com. Let's make sure it's refreshed. All right. All right, 10.7 centimeter radial flux has dropped down to 70, although still above forecasts. NASA discovers okay, I wasn't familiar with this one. Let's play a clip.
Throughout the universe, there are forces fundamental to how things move.
Please don't ban us, YouTube. Anyway, the video's at spaceweather.com. And it looks like it has some fantastic animations in it. A little beyond our capabilities here at smAsho channel currently. Look at some more data here at spaceweathernews.com. Tiny little perturbations there in the X-ray flux, nothing to write home about. And we see a spike there in the magnetometer. Nothing too crazy there going on either. Although we are expecting to see some perturbations in this throughout the day as that active region is kind of crackling with energy. KP index is down to 1. Small dip in the electron flux, and it looks like it's ramping its way back up. Charging hazards are non-existent. And there's the F2 ionosphere layer. Let's click on it just to make sure it's the most current image. And there's a pretty significant charge disparity this time. This is pretty charged. And this is pretty discharged. Although that is what we're normally seeing. Keep in mind, the spring equinox is next Wednesday. So start planning your equinox parties. We plan to do a live stream with an outdoor fire. Space weather enthusiast dashboard here. Take a look at the Enlil forecast to see if anything's changed. And the prediction is for the solar wind velocity to drop throughout the day today. We're looking at very low levels of solar activity here. And it looks like the Enlil forecast is backing that up. There's your aurora forecast, by the way. All right. And there's your total electron content forecast. Let's just skip that. Here's your geospace magnetosphere movies. Play all of these for you. And we should see some undulations in this as we just saw perturbations in the solar wind, changes in velocity and density. So we should see some, not really abnormalities, but we should see some movement going on in this. And that's pretty much what we see. I like when the data corroborates. And there you have some corroborative data. Here's the density. And you can see the different variations of solar wind there coming in from the left. And this model gives you some idea of how the magnetosphere is affected by the solar wind. Just keep in mind that on this view, white is low density, Blue is high density. There are a lot of things counterintuitive about space weather, and let's not let this be one of them. So we see on the pressure here, we see a pretty weak solar wind coming in. We see a very high angle of attack on the equatorial plane view. I guess you'd call it a really low angle of attack, headed toward the dusk side. And most of the pressure is in the magnetotail. So move on to the ground magnetic perturbation maps. We'll just look at the poles and the globe. No idea what to expect on this one, so let's let it play. You're discovering it as I do. And we see our standard South Pole bleed into the Indian Ocean, as well as a lot more perturbations over Canada than over Siberia. That's typically what we see most days. Nothing too extravagant going on there. And here's the view from the globe. We do see pulses that stretch across North America and down to Hawaii. Actually, that's a kind of a normal thing too. Some sort of a point of contact there. Some sort of point of contact there on Hawaii. And we see that regularly. All right. And let's look at earthquakes. Do the last 24 hours. But before we do that, we'll just draw in our watch zones. If you're in these areas, please be aware of the risk. Please be aware of the drought. This too, by the way. Because you're still experiencing a 6 and 7 magnitude earthquake drought. So if you're in those areas, be an asset, not a liability. In preparedness, and if a disaster does happen, don't be somebody being rescued, be somebody doing the rescuing. All right. So we see a 5.1 in Papua New Guinea. .5, well north of New Zealand, so nobody probably felt that. And there's a 4.7 right in the warning zone also. Right off the coast of Chile. There's a 4.4 in the Philippines. 5.1 in Indonesia. So we see an uptick here. We see an uptick in 5 magnitude quakes. There's one in Guam, which is also right in the watch zone. There's a 5.5 in the Philippines at 90 kilometers depth, close to what you consider blot echo range. Here's a 4.3 in Bolivia. We've seen an uptick there. There's another deep quake. So that would still be my hotspot. Here's a deep quake at Puerto Rico. So they should be on alert for a surface level mid-3. 4.1 in India. 4.3 in Russia. 4.9 in the Izu Islands. 4.4 in Chile. Yeah, it's a bit of an earthquake uptick here, folks. 5.0 in Indonesia. 5.3 in Indonesia. And a 4.4 in Japan. So there's your earthquake uptick. Have a disaster plan. Here's the volcanoes. Today's list starts out with Shivaluch producing a 12,000-foot ash plume. Oh, wow. Check it out. Bezimiani, explosive activity. A 50,000-foot ash plume. That's got to be damn close to the stratospheric boundary, folks. Now, this is very far north pretty sure that's a stratospheric level eruption, people. This is the kind of thing that cools the Earth. 50,000-foot ash plume. That is the biggest eruption we've seen in months. Sakurajima, producing a 7,000-foot plume there. Krakatoa, back to erupting after creating some new real estate and removing some other real estate. Krakatoa is back. 10,000-foot ash plume coming out of one of the newest entries on the list, Bromo. Tacona with a 6,000-foot plume. Fuego with a 15,000-foot plume. Revenador with a 15,000-foot plume. Sabancaya, sporadic puffs. And Planchon Peteroa, 14,000-foot plume there. Volcanic uptick, especially at Shivaluch. Major ash coming out of the Kamchatka Peninsula. Next, let's look at Zooniverse.org at the Galaxy Zoo project and classify a galaxy. You can too. Set yourself up a login, and you might even get published in an astronomy paper. Some interesting stuff going on here. This is a super interesting galaxy, and there are some features. So let's classify it. It's not an edge on disk. Is there a bar? I'm going to say there is a weak bar. Is there a sign of a spiral arm pattern? Well, definitely not. Is there a central bulge? Let's say moderate. Is it merging or disturbed? It's disturbed. You can see on this side, it's more diffuse and it's more compact on this side. So there is something going on. Let's just say minor disturbance. Other features? Well, there sure are, and they're funky features. This is quite an odd galaxy here. It must be one of the really massive elliptical types, because to produce this ring feature, it could also be a lens or an arc. It is irregular. There is a dust lane. I think there's overlap here. I'm not totally sure. So we pretty much checked about everything on that funky galaxy. Here's the next one. So go over and check it out. By the way, we have links to everything in the description. Let's move on to the space weather beacon, which we've been looking at daily. Excuse me. Stereo A. The best view you can get regarding coronal mass ejections. Let's distort the hell out of it so we get a lot of pixels. Let's just go back to Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard here just to explain Stereo A for our new viewers. So, Stereo A, meaning ahead, is this satellite right here. It is behind the Earth in rotation as we go around the sun this way. However, it is ahead of the Earth in terms of solar activity. That's why it's called Stereo A, ahead. This is Stereo B because it sees solar activity later. It's behind in a heliocentric fashion. Does that make sense? So here's Stereo A, the best view that we've got regarding coronal mass ejections. And there you can see the last several hours were pretty consistent. So there's that. Next, let's talk about Scope X. I think I'm going to just bring this up every day. By the way, I forgot to put the link. It's very easy to find, though. Harvard University's stupid, idiotic geoengineering ideas. They're going to try to reduce the Earth's temperature by spraying aerosols in the stratosphere. Smart idea, guys, especially when a volcano's doing it. Are they going to take credit for lowering the Earth's temperature? Probably. Tell these morons via your local Congress people to quit geoengineering. We don't want it. They can shove it. Scope X. Stupid, idiotic idea based on the false premise that the planet's warming. Here are your planets. Speaking of planets, here are your planets. Is that a segue? Don't ride a Segway, ride a bicycle. And don't do a Segway, just watch my videos. All right, so here's the planets. We see Earth and Mercury in conjunction. Let's advance it 7 days so you see what will happen in your solar system in 1 week. By the way, if you get up before it's light out, have a look on the ecliptic. You'll see Venus and possibly Jupiter and Saturn also. As you can see, they're kind of all in line. And you may even see Mercury. Keep in mind that stays even closer to the horizon than Venus does. Here's your star chart on inthesky.org. Yeah, there's Deneb, by the way. Deneb, the most distant single object visible with the naked eye alone. The tail of the swan. Let's move on to some articles. Heavy.com, super sad story. Basically, on the national perspective, from the international perspective, this is actually one of my teammates who has committed suicide about 5 days ago. She was only 23 years old. She was a current world record jersey wearer, not world record, world champion jersey wearer. She earned a silver medal in the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. One of 3 fraternal twins. She sustained a head injury a few months ago and never really recovered from it. So if you're thinking about killing yourself, don't do it. It's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Super sad. She basically is a teammate in a lot of ways, as I have actual legit teammates that were part of her Olympic sprint team. And so, yeah, if you're thinking about suicide, just talk to somebody. Don't do it. Don't do it, folks. She was a graduate student at Stanford. People around you value your life, even if you don't. So start valuing human life. Unlike this idiot who decided to shoot up some mosques yesterday in New Zealand. Stop devaluing human life. Everybody's important, even if they're different than you. So we're not going to cover this any more than saying that. Let's move on to a phys.org article. This is great progress. New 3D map will help solve long-standing cosmic mysteries. That's right. They're trying to put together a magnetic field map of our local portion of the galaxy. This is super important, people. Because, as I say regularly on this channel, the universe is run by magnetic fields. And if we understand the magnetic fields that are governing the sun's behavior and the sun's motion through the Milky Way galaxy, we will have a much better understanding of how stuff works. Now, when I was in physics class, I was that kid that asked the questions that couldn't be answered, like what is mass? Now, I didn't do it just to waste time in class or anger the professor. It was done because I really wanted to know. Now, for instance, one of my physics teachers was actually a retired physics professor from the Navy, and I knew he knew some out there stuff. So we got that guy to go off on tangents that you would not believe. And yes, we still don't understand mass, folks. It's one of the most pressing mysteries in the universe. Mass. Look it up. If you think you know where it comes from, I'm not so sure. Anyway, great article here. The link is already in the description. How do you like that? How about some music? I thought I had some music. By the way, if you're thinking about buying a bike, why not start shopping at the veloshop.net? People drive from hours around to visit this shop. The official bike shop of the Lehigh Valley Velodrome, owned by world cyclist Becky Quinn. This shop's got more than you'll need. By the way, their team shorts are the best. And I'm about to be buying a bike from them in the next couple of months. So my specialty, by the way, is time trial. But what I need is a new road bike. So maybe something like this with a little nicer wheel set. Most likely going to get a felt, by the way. That's what Becky recommends. Now, I'm a guy with a short torso, so certain bikes don't fit me right, like Cervelos. Cervelos have a very long top tube, and they don't fit me right. So anyway, head to the Velo Shop. That's theveloshop.net for anything you could imagine regarding cycling gear. Let's look at 94 angstroms here, because I want to see if there's evidence of that filament in this wavelength. Now, when we were looking at 304 angstroms, we saw a giant filament up here. I just want to see if it shows in at this wavelength also. While this loads, let me load up the chat. Now they're saying it didn't happen. I don't know about that. Kalo Jan, it's our only commenter. How about that? How many people are in here anyway? 9 viewers. Hey, thanks for tuning in, folks. By the way, if you got any questions or anything, now's the time to ask them, because we are going to be out of here shortly. We try not to start these so late, so. Don't see any sign of that filament. That was quite a filament, though, and it looked like it just came crashing back down on the sun. Show you that again. Right in this area, giant filament. Probably associated with sunspot 2734 there, not totally sure. I don't see any ejecta coming out of it. I think I saw a crown prominence there. The SDO servers are loading very slowly today. We apologize for that. It's not a local bandwidth problem, people. This is the SDO. All right, so there's that giant filament. We also see some filamentary activity in the northeast. But I think the most interesting of all would be attracting your attention to the North Polar Field, the solar polar North Pole, because the coronal hole is going away and we're seeing crown prominences. That's what you want to see, because you want the new cycle to start. You don't want to be stuck in solar minima. Remember, the climate, the Earth's climate lags solar activity by about 2 years. And what we're talking about here is the thermosphere. Now, if you're interested in this, head to spaceweather.com. Right on the left, there's your thermosphere index. And for some reason, all right, I guess I can't show you that anymore. Anyway, the thermosphere is now not as cold as it was in 2008 and 2009. Hopefully that'll be back up today. If anybody would like to inform spaceweather.com that their thermosphere climate index image is not anymore found. Maybe hopefully they're updating it. That would be the best. Let's give you one more image here. We'll look at 171 angstroms. As we will see the filament in this view. By the way, this view is great at showing magnetic loops. In any case, thank you, subscribers. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, donors. We got links to everything in the description right now. Let me move the chat over to the other side so you can see the filamentary activity. Good morning, Keith Fuller, Terrence Mooney. Terrence Mooney. Let's see. What would I recommend? I would recommend looking at all of our officially endorsed channels. Let me show you. So all of our endorsed channels have to do with the same subject matter that we cover. So if you just head to youtube.com/smAsho, click on channels. Keep in mind these are in a random order. So I would say especially watch Sky Scholar, hosted by Dr. Pierre-Marie Robitaille, because he has insight into what's really going on with the sun, since it's not made of a ball of gaseous plasma. So that would be the best thing. Yeah. But also Suspicious Observers by Ben Davidson. David Lapointe, very interesting physics of everything information there. Thunderbolts Project. If you're interested in climate stuff, Tony Heller's got stat after stat after stat disproving global warming. Christian Westbrook at Ice Age Farmer. Maverick Star Reloaded talking about the Earth's magnetic field. Electric View, long-form discussions about everything electric in the universe, because everything is. TSM, that's the Starman. He's got great information about things like the heliospheric current sheet and other cosmological stuff. Oppenheimer Ranch, hosted by Diamond, aka David Moriello. Lots of stuff about prepping and farming, and he's a geologist, so he's got a lot of insight into the geologic record. David Schlotauer, meteorologist. Now, he's not really talking about any solar stuff, but great meteorologist with some of the best software I've ever seen, doing the most in-depth forecasts I've ever seen, often in real time. And last, Rolf Vice. He's got a lot of cosmology stuff. He's got a lot of information about the externally powered sun. So yeah, I would say go to those pages, because we spend most of our time doing the most cutting edge current space weather. So there you go. And we got to get going, folks, because it is getting so late. So here's that view at 171 angstroms. Let's shrink it down. Thanks again for tuning in. Please don't forget to share on social media, as we are pretty much permanently shadow banned. That's why our subscribership is going up so slowly. So help us get unthrottled. Now, there is a little bit of incentive. Nowadays, we try not to be too controversial, although we're not going to stop calling them like we see them. Because the day I stop calling them like I see them is the day I get fired. All right, we are out of here. So remember, when you're calling them like you see them, don't drink it. If you drink, call them like you see them. Just don't drive.